Hello and welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Dalladoni, online body transformation specialist and founder of the Health Coach Fitness. I'm here to help you optimize your health and fitness, even if you're short on time.
How are we doing today? We're discussing caffeine. As you've probably noticed, I've started a little supplement series. Every so often I'm dropping a supplement in here in the podcast, just discussing what it is, what it does, and whether you should be taking it. So today we're talking caffeine, and I suppose we'll just start at the top. What is it? Well, caffeine is actually quite a powerful drug, to be honest, that acts on your central nervous system. It helps restore, obviously, some mental alertness, reduces drowsiness. Obviously, this is all the usual stuff that probably why you drink coffee. But what you might not know is that there is evidence to support the fact that it improves different aspects of cognitive function, especially during cognitive or physical tasks. So if you're having to think really hard, if you're going on a course, if you are having a project that really demands a lot of brain power, coffee might be your friend here. And the same if you're going to the gym. Obviously, we probably don't all know, that's just me assuming, but most of pre-workouts, the primary active ingredient in most pre-workouts is in fact caffeine, which makes sense. As we said, improves physical tasks. Having caffeine before you work out makes sense. And what it tends to help with in particular is reasoning, memory, and reaction time. So obviously if you're having some cognitively demanding tasks, if you're, like I say, on a course or having to really focus quite hard on a project you're doing, or if you're studying for whatever reason, then that reasoning, those reasoning skills, that your reasoning ability will potentially improve by having some coffee. Obviously your memory and your recall also. And obviously, like I say, reaction time pertains to being physical. Cool. Now, like I say, where it comes to the physical aspect of things, obviously this is why we're here. To dive a little bit deeper, caffeine has actually been shown to support both aerobic and anaerobic output. What does that actually mean in English, please? So cardio and weights. We can, I suppose, summarize it like that. Now, it obviously with all these things, it depends. It's never quite as clear cut as that, but you can think about it in those terms. Okay, how does it work? That is, in fact, the big question. And the answer might not be what you expect. The answer is, we aren't really sure. As in, we have some idea, obviously, but it's not fully understood. And naturally, the reasoning goes that the couple of mechanisms that we think caffeine works on probably work together. They probably act synergistically, as it were. How do we think it works? And the primary action that we understand caffeine does is it binds to adenosine receptors. And that affects multiple neurotransmitters, the secretion of multiple neurotransmitters. Things like norepinephrine, I always struggle with that one, dopamine, acetylcholine, GABA, and all these things, they obviously have their own cascades that they work down, but they all affect things like your alertness, your mood, your motivation, and weirdly, pain. Caffeine molecule goes, it looks similar to an adenosine molecule. And these receptors, they're expecting adenosine, instead receive caffeine. And then that, like I say, it affects how the cascades of neurotransmitters are secreted, which will impact and have an effect on things like your alertness and your mood and so on. And caffeine, the other thing we believe caffeine does is caffeine seems to have a direct effect on your calcium transport in your muscle tissue, in your muscle cells, which means it probably has a bit of a direct effect on how much force you can contract your muscle with, how much power you can generate, which naturally circles back to why it seems to have some performance enhancing benefits where it comes to physical activity. The question I get asked all the time: can caffeine help with fat loss? And caffeine seems to increase fat oxidation, but wait, before you get too excited, it is negligible. It's virtually not worth mentioning. And the role it plays in appetite suppression and overall food intake, overall energy intake, isn't clear. Now, some people anecdotally report that they feel less hungry, as in their appetite is suppressed when they drink coffee. Some people don't. So really, it's like we don't have data, like the data we have isn't clear at the moment. But obviously, if anything exciting comes out in the future, I'll make sure to update you guys. But at the moment, I wouldn't rely on it. Having said that, as we know, fat loss is always and forever related to what? Energy balance. So calorie intake, calorie output. If having enough caffeine means you're more active in the day, then perhaps it could mean that you're outputting more calories than you're intaking, which could lead to some fat loss. But there are some drawbacks to caffeine. Start with the stuff that's pretty obvious. Things like elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, heart palpitations. And then some of the ones you might not associate with caffeine, but it's there, is increased nervousness and anxiety. Obviously, if you're not able to rest, if you're a little bit more stimulated, it makes sense that your jitters, as it were, not physical jitters, but like a mental jitters, where you're a little bit more anxious, a little bit more on edge, as it were, could also increase. One that you might not realize, but increased peeing. So if you're going to the toilet 17 times a day and you're having 3 liters of coffee a day, well, maybe it's that. And one that obviously a lot of people have experienced, a lot of people know, is gastrointestinal problems, GI problems. Basically, your guts don't like it. So if you're getting the rumbly guts after your coffee, don't do it. Right. Now, we'll save the biggest drawback for last because I like this one. Impaired sleep. So naturally, this makes sense. And I've spoken on the podcast a few times already about making sure you're having your caffeine with enough time for the effects of the caffeine to not subside, because it doesn't subside that quickly, but to lessen, let's say, before you hit the sack in the evening. Now, a recent meta-analysis, so if you guys aren't fully in with the strength of evidence, meta-analyses are effectively the creme de la creme of scientific literature, because what it does is it collates multiple studies within, obviously they have a criteria that they're trying to fill, and within that criteria, they'll bring together lots of different individual studies, and they'll analyze the data of all of these studies together they'll analyze, hence analysis, and it's many studies, hence meta-analysis. So really, when you're talking meta-analysis, you're talking, obviously the bigger the meta-analysis, the better, as in the more studies it can encompass, the better. But even it tends to be up there with the best scientific evidence we can muster. So a recent meta-analysis has found that caffeine should be consumed a maximum of 9 hours before bed, and that pre-workout should be consumed around 13 hours before bed. For all cases out there deciding that you want to take a pre-workout at 7 o'clock in the evening, you are mad. Because let me tell you, it just isn't worth it. Because what you're doing is you feed into the cycle of, we're not really going to go into sleep too much here, but you feed into the cycle. You have caffeine late. It's not that you can't get to sleep so much as it is that it impairs your sleep that you're having. It's a little bit like alcohol. You get to sleep, but it messes up the quality of sleep you have. And the problem with that is that when you wake up the following morning, you're knackered. And so all of that has obviously an impact on how you feel the following day, which then means you want more coffee, which then means your sleep is impaired, which you get the idea. Caffeine has its drawbacks. Like I said, it also elevates all your heart rate and your blood pressure. It might give you some heart palpitations as well. So it's putting a slight strain on your heart, obviously depending on how much caffeine you are having. This is by no means not an endorsement of caffeine. Caffeine is a good supplement, but the reason we do these is so you guys are informed of what is going on. So it can improve your memory, it can improve your reasoning, it'll probably definitely improve your physical performance, but it'll also destroy your sleep, as long as you know. Awesome, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. As always, share, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and I will be seeing you next time.